Right. I hope everybody's doing okay. And this is a bit new for me to try out, so hopefully it will go okay. I guess what I want to do is I've been thinking about what people are doing, what people are up to, and thinking that there's probably people with quite a bit of time on their hands. Um, and I thought it would be good to do a portrait exercise. Definitely the start of something. It's not going to be like um, a full piece about portraiture, but it's going to be just a little start to get you going. And I thought it would be interesting to aim this probably at amateur painters and drawers who just want to have a go, get a little bit better. You could try it with kids as well. And really the first thing that I want to say about this is I think being a good artist is really about how you understand the world. So yes, it is sometimes about the skill of drawing, but I think certainly this tutorial is definitely going to focus on observation and understanding what you're looking at, as opposed to just trying to make something look flashy. So don't worry too much if what you're doing doesn't seem to be really spectacular or really impressive. You'll probably see from my drawing as well that mine won't end up being really brilliant, but hopefully it will help you a little bit in understanding what it is you're looking at. And oh wow, we've got people in Chicago and in Brighton, Hackney, somebody in Russia. Hello, Sue. So yeah, let's start out. I think if you've got some kids who are interested in characters, in comics, in cartoons, because I asked you yesterday what kind of things you'd be interested in me focusing on, and I heard a little bit that there were lots of replies, right? So there were a lot of people wanting to know about hands. There were lots of people wanting to know about portraiture for sure, and proportions, but something certainly that I'm not really good at is cartoons and comics, but I think this exercise can probably really help with trying to get your head around that and definitely make it better. So look, as I say, this is the first one, this is the test, so anything you want to me to cover more, or anything you want me to cover on further topics, please let me know in the comment section. And somebody also in South London, very good, hello. Oh, and in Cambridgeshire, hi Holly. Right, okay, let's get started. So what I asked you to do was to bring a, I know what I'm going to do, it's going to be easier probably if I go here. Okay, so what I asked you to do was to bring a can. So this is going to be my lunch after I finish this. So hopefully you've still got some cans left. It doesn't need to be a bean can, but probably not a tuna can. It needs to be one of these big cans. And I want you to, this is going to be the main tool that we're going to use in terms of trying to understand what we're looking at in terms of proportions of a head. I want to start by doing something though, first of all. Hopefully this will work. I want to share with you a photo that I took earlier. Right, so that's a picture of me that I took earlier. And I want you to look at the proportions of the head. So the main thing that I want you to think about is that the eye sockets lie in the middle of a head. So I think a lot of people think that they don't, that they are probably nearer the top of the head than the bottom of the head. And even when you're looking at this still image of me, maybe that's still the case. Maybe you still think that the eyes don't actually rest in the middle of the head. I want to show you something here. So I want to think about, first of all, let's get this a little bit, get that a little bit softer so that it's not so dominant. Right, okay, so let's think about where the eyes sit. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line where the eyes are. And then I'm going to draw a line at the top of the head and at the bottom of the head. All right, so hopefully you can see that, where are we? That this distance here is the same as this distance here. And I think really that is the first thing to get your head around. I know it's really easy looking at it on a photograph of somebody, but I've taken another photo, like really, really technically, with a ruler on one side. And I don't know if you can see on this ruler, but you can see the top half goes to 7.5, and then the bottom half goes to 15. So where my eyes are is exactly on the 7.5 mark. Top of my head is there at the start of the ruler, and then my chin is at 15. So I'm not saying that my head is 15 inches tall. That's but just bear that in mind in terms of proportions. So the top half is X and the bottom half is X. So hopefully that makes you or just helps you understand when you look at somebody just how their head is arranged in terms of where their eyes come. So let's just go back into there a minute, and I'm going to just take down the opacity there, and sorry, I'm in the wrong layer. Let's take down the opacity there, and I'm just going to draw over this first of all before I carry on, to just help you understand maybe what I'm talking about. So if that is the outline of my head, so try and think about it like as a head, not a face. So the way I think about it, I suppose, is that a head is something three-dimensional and a face is a flat surface. So this exercise definitely is about thinking about things much more three-dimensionally. I think I'm somebody that sees the world very three-dimensionally, and probably makes it a little bit more complicated sometimes, but the world exists in 3 dimensions. I know that a piece of paper is 2-dimensional or flat, but try and think of a head as something 3-dimensional. Right, then if we think about where the eyes sit here, and what I was saying about that line being exactly in the, or not exactly, but fairly much in the middle of top and bottom. Maybe we could think also of a vertical line there. The tip of the nose, I think, sits again halfway between that point and that point. And then the mouth halfway again between this point and this point. Then if you think about the ears, they fit pretty much from the top of the eyes, so from that point there, and then the tip of the nose, which is there, the bottom of the ears come. I'm explaining this in a really technical way at the moment because I think I want to try and communicate the kind of things that I look at when I'm looking at people's faces. And I'm obsessed with looking at people's faces. I think I get into trouble with it quite a lot. I'm always like saying to my friends, oh, look, that person looks like somebody that we know. Or I've even recently gone up to somebody at the gym and said, do you know this guy? And shown the random guy at the gym a picture of somebody that he thought, that I thought he looked like. And the guy took the phone off me and wanted to know more about this guy. So that was my best one I've ever done, because normally people just say, oh, it's rubbish, they don't look like so-and-so. But I'm always looking at people because I think there's lots of reasons, but I think I'm just endlessly fascinated with people's faces. Okay, so let's get back onto this a little bit. So I've tried to break up the face there, and I want you to, again, think about these ears. So I'll just change the color a little bit. So think about where the ears come in relation to the top of the eye and the tip of the nose. And then think about the eyes being in the middle of the head. Okay, so we'll come back to that maybe in a little bit. So I'm going to come back here and let me have a look. I need to have a look at people. So there are people in Kingston, so I need to say hello to you guys. So somebody in Mexico. Oh, Paula in Mexico. Fantastic. Hello. Right, let me get this away and I'll try. Sorry, I'm trying to juggle a couple of screens a little bit here. Okay, so let's move on a little bit to the can thing. So here's the can. The first thing that I want you to do, actually the very first thing that you need to do is get a pen and write what they are on the top. So I'm going to write beans so that I don't have tomato soup on toast later on. So yeah, make sure you write what's in the can. Okay, so somewhere on the can there, can you see there's a join mark? So I think that's going to be pretty useful for us. Now, what I want you to do, as I was saying, I think a head is something three-dimensional, and I want you to think about when you're looking to draw somebody's face, think about it really as something three-dimensional, 3D, and not two-dimensional, not like a flat side or a flat face. The way I can show you that is by, if you think about somebody's head like a cylinder, so not a football and not an egg, but a cylinder. If I look backward, I'll explain this a bit more later. If I look backwards, that's what happens. And if I look down, that's kind of what happens to the cylinder, right? So just bear that in mind when we move on to this next, part. So the first thing I really need you to do is take the wrapping, because it just gets a bit confusing. Take the wrapping off the can. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw the can. So I'm going back into the drawing app. Hopefully that's looking, is that right? No. Oh yes. Okay. Hopefully that's looking okay, because I figured it was maybe easier for me to draw on an iPad. I think drawing on a piece of paper, it doesn't kind of photograph very well. So I'm just going to draw with a 6B pencil. The program I'm using is Procreate. I found it really good, really easy to start using, and it's free, and yeah, it's fairly simple, and I think it does this task quite well. So let's think about, first of all, drawing that baked bean can. So starting with the ellipse on the top, and then the sides, and then the base here. Okay, thinking about those ellipses. So when you're drawing, don't draw too hard to begin with. You can just think about drawing very, very softly. Then let's think that there is, do you remember I was saying on the can, there's that line. So I'm just going to put that in. So I'm going to be really thinking about a kind of 3/4 view. So there's that line. And maybe also thinking about the top point. Right, what's really good about this can is it has some lines on it which run around the kind of face, or the circumference of the cylinder. And I'm going to put some of those in. Okay, so the first thing, thinking about this line, I'm going to put the first line in that goes around there, which is, do you remember I was saying that's where your eyes are, in the middle? And then I'm going to cut that line in half again. Okay, so I'm going to draw another ellipse around there, and then that one again. So what I'm doing, I've got this point here. I'm kind of going to draw a diagram, right? So I've got this point here, this line here that goes round. I've got another line here, and then I've got another line here. So this one, A, that's kind of in between this point and this point. And then B is probably in between A and the bottom, and B is between, and then C is between B and the bottom. I'm just going to get rid of those because I don't kind of need those for this explanation. Okay, so started to draw the baked bean can a little bit like that. Now, think about where the eye sockets are. And you can do this by looking at somebody, but I think, first of all, the first thing I would do would just be to kind of get your head around this concept a little bit. So think about where the eye sockets are, and then think about where the tip of the nose might be, and then think about where the mouth might come. So I'll do another tutorial at some point about eyes and eye sockets, but I've drawn them big because I kind of think that there's a socket and then there's a ping pong ball, which is your eyeball, which fits into that socket. So within the eye socket, there is the sphere, which is the ping pong ball. And then let's just think about the nose for a second. So the nose comes depth from the center, from that center point down, out three-dimensionally. And then do you remember what I said about the ears? So the ears are starting at the top of the eyes. So we can follow this line around, okay? Because that line is now a three-dimensional line. It's not a straight line that goes horizontally anymore. So that goes around here, and that's where the top of the ear might start, and then it might end at the base of the nose. Obviously, some people have got big ears and some people have got little ears. So try and look for these reference points. What I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to set up a kind of a grid, a kind of a reference before I really start to get likeness or color or tone to give three-dimensional qualities to the portrait. I'm just figuring out the structure first of all. Okay, so once we have that, let's think a little bit more about the shape of the head. So that point there in the middle, that's where the top of the head will come. And if we follow that round and down, and that's the bottom where my chin was, you can start to see, you can start to develop a three-dimensional head based on these markings. So let's think about putting a little bit more detail in here. Let's think about the eyes and the eyeballs. And kind of get those a little bit bigger maybe. And then think about where the top eyelid might be. We can think about the nose and think about three-dimensionalizing that. Remember, it sticks out. This is slightly three-quarter view. And think about where the eyebrows might be. Okay, and then we can start to think about the mouth and where that is. Now, I know at the beginning that kind of looked weird, didn't it? It looked like somebody had a really kind of huge forehead. But remember, this is almost like looking at the can down a little bit, so as though it's below eye level. And I think once you start to think about putting some, I guess the hairline would be around here. It wasn't really my intention to do a self-portrait, but you know, I think at this point it's going to look kind of strange, but you could start to put in some rough idea of hair. Actually, that's horrible. I'm going to get rid of that. You can start to put in some rough idea of hair and think about where that might come. And then think about the head sitting on some kind of neck, and then on some shoulders. So I think I can go into a little bit more detail here about trying to make it look a little bit more realistic and a little bit more human. But I think for now, that's kind of what I want to talk about in terms of thinking about things three-dimensionally, thinking about where things sit in relation to each other. And I think things like thinking about, maybe I'll just draw over this a little bit in another color. If you think about where things are, so those eyes sit on a curved surface. Okay, our head is a curved surface, a bit like the tin of beans, which is why I started on that. So this might help you in terms of thinking about getting these. I think a lot of people struggle with making, certainly with a three-quarter view, making it look like one eye that's moving around the corner is kind of smaller than the other, but just kind of be aware of those things. I think if you think about it sitting on a curved surface, it will really help. I've got a little bit more to go, but let's see what else is going on here. Right. Okay. I'm going to show you one last thing here, which is I'm going to go back to the baked bean can. Let me come out of the. Let me come out of that. Yeah, I'm going to go back to the baked bean can, and I'm going to stick on this really roughly. Oh, this is going to be difficult for me to show. I have got the bean can there, and I'm going to stick on some parts. This is going to look really weird, I think. It's going to look like a Mr. Potato Head or something. So just bear with me while I do this. I think it's maybe just a way to explain things, and it might be a little bit easier to understand, hopefully. So I'm going to put ears on either side. So this, I think, is something which you can try and make. So I'm always really trying to find ways of explaining things which are simple, which hopefully people can understand. Because I think, like I said at the beginning, understanding what you're looking at is something that people think it's all about the skill of drawing, whereas I think it's about the skill of understanding. And I think if you can get your head around this, then you hopefully will be able to start to make your drawings better. So this little guy here, he's right. Sorry, that took a little bit of time. So that's what I've made. Okay, so that's a diagram of a head. Now, what I want you to see is do you remember at the beginning I showed you I tilted my head? So when that happens, look at where my ears are compared with the tip of my nose. So that started to make a very different shape. So that when my head is straight like that, it's kind of in line. And the same thing, if my head goes down, you'll see that the tips of my ears to my nose really changes. So the way you can see that is through a little model like that. So you can't really see the guy's nose, the tip of the nose very well, sorry, in there. So that as that changes, so the relationship between the body features, the face features change. Okay, so that's maybe something you can make, which you could start to might make you understand or help you to understand a little bit how things might be when you start to draw. So just before I go, I'm going to have another go at trying to explain what I was just talking about there. So if you think about looking from, oh, hang on, sorry, I need to share the screen with you, don't I? Does that come up? I think so. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so if we think about 3 baked bean cans. Okay, so this last one is probably the one that I drew in the bigger tutorial. So if we think here that this is a head, so I'm working on the first one now. So think about this being a head, and think about where the nose is, where the ears are, where the eye sockets are, and where the mouth is. And then this is the last one is kind of similar to what I drew with the bigger tutorial. So this is just kind of a repeat of that. Thinking about the eye sockets, where the mouth is, where the ears are, the head shape. And then I suppose I think the middle one probably is a little bit more neutral, but I think kind of a bit more difficult to understand. I guess the eye would be a straight line because it's kind of in the middle. And you'd have the eye sockets and the nose and the mouth. Yeah, remember that it always sits on some shoulders. So I think those three, what I'm trying to show you there is this kind of thing. So that's the first one, that's the second one, and then that's the third one. Okay, so slightly lower angle. So the first one would be like you're looking up at somebody. So that would be if you're sitting on the floor, drawing somebody watching TV. The middle one is looking straight on at somebody, so you've got the same eye level. And then the third one would probably be if you were standing at an easel and they were sitting down in front of you. So I think that pretty much sums up what I wanted to go through today. Let me see if there are any questions. I'm doing pretty well for timing. I wanted to keep it under 30 minutes. Hello, Merton Park. Oh, it's Andrew in Merton Park. Yes, what else would you want to know? I think probably, I don't know, this was kind of quite easy to set up. So I think I'll do another one, but it would be really good if you could send me a note if there's anything that you want to know in more detail. So we'll probably do something tomorrow or the next day. Not tomorrow, actually. I'm working tomorrow, working from home tomorrow. So maybe Friday we'll try something. Let me know what you'd like to talk about. So we can talk about lots of things. So suggestions I've had so far: hands, hair, cross-hatching, shading, light and dark, likeness, eyes, noses, mouth, animals, cartoons, comics, materials. I'm happy to talk about any of those kind of things. Try and be really specific. I'm not a teacher, so if you say, can you do something great for kids? Yes, I can. I need a bit of help though, so I need a little bit of help to understand what exactly you think your kids need to work on. And it would also help me to pitch that at a certain age. So I guess this tutorial is probably pretty good for somebody 8, 9 and above. But all these things, you can really take on board if you can kind of understand what it is that I'm trying to get across. Hopefully when you then start another portrait and you start to look at the next person that you look at, you'll hopefully start to see them slightly differently. What I want to do with this series is kind of break stuff down. So my normal channel is called Ordinary Made Extraordinary, but I think with this, I'm trying to do the opposite. So I'm trying to make it Extraordinary Made Ordinary. So trying to think about things which are really difficult to understand and break them down and talk about them in a way which makes them a little bit easier to understand. Okay, so leave some comments in the feedback section and I will see you next time. So thank you very much.